Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel at NDN TV Nigeria. Click on the subscribe button and be the first to get notifications.
With a gradual recession of flood that left no fewer than 1.2 million people displaced in Bayelsa State, the state government last week commenced the closure of IDP camps across the state. A correspondent reports that this was after the Bayelsa state government disbursed close to ₦1 billion to cater for the needs of internally displaced persons.
With the recession of the recent flood that ravaged Bayelsa State, the state government last week commenced the closure of IDP camps. The IDP camp at Oxbow Lake in Yenagwa was among the first camps to be closed. As they prepared to return safely to their homes, the camp commandant Honorable Ibiowo Koko Obiai and other internally displaced persons observed that the Bayelsa State Governor, Senator Diri'S, was with them in the midst of adversity.
This is a governor that stood by us, went from community to community, provide a shelter for people to stay. And that's what we are thanking God for today. We thank the governor, we thank him, we pray that good Lord will also send help to him at his point of need.
The governor could not even leave the state. He was here during the flood.
At the peak of this year's flood, over 90% of communities in Bayelsa State were submerged in water. Statistics released by the Bayelsa State Emergency Management Agency shows that about 1.2 million persons had been internally displaced, while 96 others lost their lives, bringing the number of casualties to roughly 1.3 million. It became a very troubling situation for Governor Diri'S, whose prompt response had prevented more needless deaths and precariousness in the state. The Bayelsa State Governor had on the 13th of October 2022 approved the sum of 450 million naira to relocate internally displaced persons to IDP camps and make provisions for food and medicine. Having discovered that the various IDP camps were running out of initial basic supplies, Governor Diri'S had directed the release of additional 450 million naira in less than 2 weeks. As part of efforts to protect lives, Governor Diri'S gave an approval for the closure of schools and a break for workers while visiting affected communities to sympathize with them. As the flood raged on, Governor Diri'S had vowed that he would not step out of Bayelsa State in its very trying moments.
As governor, I told myself that within this period, no invitation will take me out of the network. People have nowhere to sleep. Some are sleeping on the main road. Some are being beaten by snakes. Some are catching cold because they are exposed to the cold environment. Some have even died. And so I should not sit down in my office.
Noticing that this year's flood disaster that hit some 22 states across Nigeria was particularly overwhelming for Bayelsa State, some public-spirited businessmen and politicians had visited the state to sympathize with Bayelsans. Among them were Governor Udom Emmanuel of Akwa Ibom State and Mr. Peter Obi, presidential candidate of the Labour Party.
At a time like this, you have a governor who is not abroad. You have a governor who is not sitting in Abuja, who is moving in a canoe with you people, who is sharing these pains and this moment, feed you, give you medical attention, give you things that will ameliorate the suffering of the people here now. At this time that you need us most, we, your leaders, will always be there for you.
So far, Governor Diri'S has demonstrated proactive leadership with the way he handled the flood disaster in Bayelsa State. However, the economic burden of perennial flooding in Nigeria has proved to be too heavy for states to shoulder alone. Fortunately, the federal government plans to roll out a special fund for flood victims and initiate a national policy on flood insurance to mitigate the impact of flood on states across the country. Bayelsans expect, therefore, that theirs, which is one of the most heavily impacted states, will be given priority attention.
Inside the Niger Delta,